So since 177, the very first video that we're playing, is on mute, tell the court what we're looking at here.
I'm arriving on scene initially. I'm about to meet with Sergeant Tim Johnson, Matthews Park County Police Department.
That individual we see in the frame at 1337, who's that?
That is Sergeant Tim Johnson. I can't remember the name of the other officer in the background, and that is Diego in the red sweatshirt.
And what apartment number is Diego standing out front of?
D126.
Does Sergeant Johnson show you an image at some point in this encounter with him?
Yes, right now. He's showing me a still frame image from video that they had recovered that I didn't have at that time.
And that still frame image, do we see it in your screen at 1337?
Yes, ma'am, on the phone.
And was that an image taken from a dumpster nearby?
Yes.
So he shows you that image, and then what do you do?
This is news to me. I was coming on shift roughly maybe an hour before this. So I relayed that to my superiors who were about to pull up, coincidentally, and then explained to them that, hey, they've got footage. At that time, I was not aware that they had already been aware of that footage.
The footage that was shown to you by Sergeant Johnson, what, if anything, was significant about it to you, and then what you were observing for yourself on Diego Ibarra?
At first, videoing it or reviewing the video, the still frame photo, Sergeant Johnson informs me that the image shows a male holding a hat or having a black Adidas hat, and then he informs me that I couldn't necessarily see from that distance until I get closer to Diego, but that Diego is wearing an identical hat, a black Adidas flat-bill hat.
Did you make any observations about the hat that Diego was wearing?
Once I got closer, yes. I noticed on the back what I believe to be dirt on the brim.
And was that significant to you?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was on scene when we located Laken the day prior. She did have a lot of dirt, mulch, and things like that on her body. And I felt that if an individual was wearing that hat and was touching Laken in that manner, dirt could have been transferred to the hat by moving the hat.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit for the record. At some point, do you begin talking to Diego Ibarra through your interpreter?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And how would you describe Diego Ibarra's demeanor with you and with you?
I mean, he's compliant. He's not posing any issues. Obviously, there's a block there through communication. But based off his physical mannerisms, I'm not really getting any deceptive behavior per se. I was aware at this point he did provide a fake green card, so he was detained for that.
Right.
He seemed to understand that we were detaining him for an investigative purpose. There appeared to be good rapport between him and officers, especially with Officer Bridges there, who you see.
If you could, do you have the pointer in front of you?
I'm not sure if I do.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Point out to the court at 1342 in your muted video that we're playing. Where's Officer Bridges?
He's right here in an identical uniform that I'm wearing.
All right. And the one closest to Diego in this frame?
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead. So you talk to him at some point. At some point, do you decide to obtain a search warrant for the apartment and to freeze the apartment?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, based on the fact that he was wearing that hat, the time frame that Tim Johnson encountered him was within 24 hours of the murder. He was walking back towards the general direction of campus, which was concerning as well. He somewhat matched the description of the male seen in that photo, discarding of what I later learned was evidence found in that dumpster.
And specific what evidence?
A sweater or a pullover of some sort with blood on it.
Okay.
And hair.
Okay. And did you ever see that evidence, or you were just informed of it?
No, it was picked up throughout the middle of the night. I was there all day the day before. They sent me home to get a sleep cycle, and I was the supervisor this day.
All right.
So I never saw the evidence throughout the night.
All right, go ahead.
And
What
then
about the proximity from the dumpster to Laken Riley's body?
the dumpster to Laken Riley's body, probably rough estimate 500 yards.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So at some point, when you're with Diego Ibarra and you decide to get the search warrant, first of all, how do you communicate that to get the search warrant?
I go and talk to my superiors and I ask them, because they're maybe 20, 30 yards away in the parking lot at another vehicle discussing. I think they were talking to some GBI agents and other agency partners. And I asked for clarification of, at this point I gained knowledge there were other individuals inside the apartment. I wanted to start getting resources in and confirming that yes, we are going to go ahead and surround it. A warrant's going to be sought, and I need other translators here because from what I'm gathering, no one else speaks English inside the apartment.
And how many other individuals did you believe to be inside the apartment?
At this time, 3.
And could you see them from where you're standing?
No, not without being intrusive of sticking my face up to that window, which we didn't do. One, for an officer safety standpoint, but also, I didn't have a warrant at that point yet.
Do you see the window? You said the window. Can you point the window out? Is
Yes.
that, and that's again 1342. Is that the window to D126?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to roll a little more. At some point, do you start asking Diego questions about whether he has any injuries?
Eventually, yes, I did.
And do you take pictures of him, and do you see parts of his body?
Correct. Yes, I did.
Going to- play the video first, and then show you some photos. First of all, did you? You mentioned to us that there was a fake ID, so you knew he had given a fake ID. Tell us a little bit of that process.
I didn't obtain it myself. It was provided to Sergeant Johnson when he located him and was identifying him. Sergeant Johnson provided it to me and stated, if you look at it, there's 2 different dates of birth listed. There was one vertically on the side and then one listed with the rest of his identification information.
So did you agree with Sergeant Johnson's assessment that this was not a valid form of government identification?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to go to, I'm still muted. About 1358 on State's Exhibit 177. What are we looking at here now at 1358?
I believe at this point my captain, Seth Robinson, was interested in seeing his hands.
And
asked him-
does he show you his hands?
Yes. So Captain Robinson, I believe, asked Officer Bridges to relay to him to please, show us your hands, and he complied. But put his hands out.
And did you see his hands?
I did.
Did you see any injuries to his hands?
No.
At 1359, what are we seeing Diego Ibarra do?
He was asked about, I believe they were asking this, if he could take his jacket off, and they were looking at tattoos as well as trying to make observations of any other potential injuries.
And go ahead.
And he takes his jacket off and becomes, I don't know exactly what he says. He starts kind of ranting a little bit and pulls his shirt up and shows us his stomach and his side tattoo.
And do you see any injuries on his stomach?
From my vantage point, no, I did not.
And if you had seen any injuries, would you have documented them?
Yes.
Okay. So may we toggle over, Your Honor? States 178, what are we looking at there?
That is a picture of Diego.
And do we see the hat he's wearing in this image?
Yes.
Is that the black Adidas hat that you've already described?
Yes, ma'am.
States 179. Well, who is that?
That's Diego.
Okay, and on his face, does he have any tattoos?
He does. He has a teardrop tattoo on his right eye, kind of off to the side there. It's a little hard to see if you zoomed in, but we identified as potential gang affiliation tattoo. Can
you point to that on
Yes.
the right side for 179? So what that image is, or that mark on his face at states 179, was that an injury?
No, it's a tattoo.
All right, thank you. States 180.
Again, it's Diego.
And do you see a tattoo on his neck?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, please point to that. 182.
Diego again.
Okay, does he have tattoos on the back of his neck?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please point to those? 183.
It's a close-up of the picture we just looked at.
And in 183, can you actually see the rest of the hat?
You can, yeah.
Okay. 184.
Rib cage tattoo. I'm not sure what the design was.
So tattoos, but did you observe any injuries?
No.
At some point while you are there, Sergeant, and approximately how long are you at this apartment complex that day?
All day, from 8:32 in the morning, and I don't think I was released till probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
All right, I'm gonna go back to a different section of your video. And again, it's played on mute. We are now at 14:34 in the top count for the record. So that would be 9:38 a.m. Am I right about that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At 9:38 a.m., we see an individual in a yellow shirt. Can you please point to that person first of all? And who is that person?
That is a brother Argenis, either Argemis or Argenis Ibarra.
And how did this person appear in this video? What happened?
He, while speaking with Diego and waiting for resources and other things, he walked out with a trash bag, like a 5-gallon plastic white trash bag that you would buy at Kroger.
Was he detained as well?
Yes.
And did you photograph him that day?
We did.
And I don't need to toggle over, but states 185, who is that?
That's Argenis.
At some point, did you obtain consent to enter the apartment from Argenis?
Yes.
And did you in fact enter the apartment?
I did.
What was your purpose of entering the apartment?
Well, he informed us that something was on the stove and that he was very adamant about going in to turn the stove off, I believe because of a fire hazard. So that was what we asked for consent to do.
And prior to going in, did you look to see if there are residents inside?
I did what we call a threshold evaluation, so I kind of peeked around from an angle because the door was already open. When Argenis left, he left the door open. So I could kind of see what the environment inside looked like. And when I didn't see any obvious threats, that's when I got closer to the doorway.
In States 177, we're now playing the second video for the record, and we're at 1442. Could you show the court where the open door is in the frame? All right. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to the time where you made entry. And at this point, I am going to play, so 14, we're at 14:55 for the record, and I am going to play this video with volume because there's no statements of individuals. But the officers, and there is no confrontation issue here. But now our video is not working. Our audio is not working. There we go.
And that's back by the bedroom. Exigency for me to go in there pursue. Just a normal thing. I gotta go into the that's true. Yeah, I'll do it. There's a guy right here. There's a guy right here. Yeah, but Hola. 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 Policia. Manos, hey. Policia, manos.
He said he left them on the stove, so I'm going to try and get it off.
Hey, I need you to translate one at a time. Come here. Come to me. Come here.
Look, we need to back up.
For you. Tell him I need to see his hands. I need to see his hands.
Hey, put the mano para arriba.
Tell him to slowly get out. Ask him to need anybody else.
Despacito, parte de la cama.
That's a match, man.
Ahí.
See it slowly.
También acá, despacito. Ven para acá. ¿Tienes algo en tus botas? ¿Hay alguien más aquí dentro? No.
Pull me in.
Ven para acá.
There's nobody else in here?
¿Hay alguien más ahí dentro? No. Dice no.
Turn this bitch off.
Okay, I'm going to pause it at 14:58 for the record. Were there people inside the apartment?
Yes.
How many?
2.
What were they doing?
Laying in bed.
Could you see their hands or their bodies?
No.
You had Bridges translate for you at some point, and when you went in, we could see a light. Were you holding a flashlight in your hand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Were there, in fact, beans on the stove?
There were in
Okay.
a crock pot, the ceramic part of a crock pot.
All right. And you turned those off?
I tried.
The individual, first of all, the 2 individuals was one male and one was female.
Correct.
Okay. The female, What was her name?
Her name was Rosabelli, and I can't remember her last name at the moment.
That other male that was in the apartment, what is his name?
Jose Ibarra.
And do you see that person that you pulled out of the apartment at 1458 in this screen?
Yes, you do.
And what color clothing is he wearing?
Red shirt, black shorts, and like black and red sandals.
And the person that you pulled out of the apartment on 23rd day of February 2024, do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Please point to him and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing for the record.
He's wearing a striped button-down shirt.
May the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant. Did you, at some point, have the opportunity to observe Jose Ibarra, the defendant, on scene?
Yes.
How close were you at times to Jose Ibarra?
Your normal conversation distance, maybe a foot and a half.
Did you observe any injuries to Jose Ibarra?
I did.
What injuries did you observe?
While speaking to him, I noticed on his right arm, his bicep, there was a scratch, which I identified as a potential defensive wound. On his left arm, he had a forearm scratch that was very similar, which in my mind looked like fingernail scratches to me. While he was sitting there speaking to us, I also noticed on his left wrist, just below the palm, he had a puncture, maybe a half an inch wide, that through my experiences of playing sports in high school and receiving the same injury from fingernails in football, I could see like wet flesh, like almost like it was fresh. It wasn't very old, possibly still irritated. And as he moved his wrists, when I was looking at them closely, I could actually see the liquid, or I guess body fluids that would be in that cut, kind of reflecting with light.
Did you observe, I'm going to publish a few of the photos. Court, would you please toggle over it, Your Honor? States 186. Who is that?
That's Jose Ibarra.
And how would you describe his beard and mustache situation?
It's thicker than Diego's, if I remember correctly. Not well maintained. He had sort of a neck beard. Wasn't very long, but it was definitely an established beard. I wouldn't consider it like a 5 o'clock shadow.
Did Jose Ibarra have any tattoos on his neck?
No.
As far as height and weight differentials, you were with both Jose Ibarra and Diego Ibarra?
Correct.
How would you describe their height and weight differential?
Jose at the time weighed more through my observations and was shorter.
And when you say at the time, does he look thinner in court today?
He does.
Okay. Is that the way he looked on February 23rd as far as weight? When I say he, I mean Jose.
No.
States 188, what's that?
That is the back of Jose's head.
187?
That is a close-up picture of Jose's mouth and lips. We were concerned. It looked like his lips were red and irritated.
189?
A side profile picture. That's the right arm with a scratch.
191?
That would be the left lower wrist, forearm area with a scratch, as well as the palm.
192?
That is his left palm that had some bruising on the thumb palm area, and if you kind of look below that area, you'll see an irritated red area, which is where I saw that fingernail puncture mark.
Okay, the one that was pussing or oozing? You said?
Yeah, it was.
Could you please point to that in 192? At the middle of the screen, thank you.
Right.
193?
That's another picture of his right arm with a tattoo, but also you can see the fingernail scratch.
And 194?
That is a scratch on his forearm.
at some point, did you question Jose Ibarra about his injuries?
I used a translator. Yes, we did.
We've got open the GBI Cyber folder. What is the date and time that we're looking at on the video? Can you show us?
It's February 22nd, 2024.
And before we talk about what we're about to see, let's get a little context. Is there a bus stop here?
There is.
Can you point to it with the pointer? There's a pointer right in front of you.
Right.
And in this frame, where is building S?
Building S is over here to the left.
And the road that we see that there's now a red line on, what road is that?
This part here is Village Avenue Extension. This is Rogers Road where they connect at the bus stop.
She cannot hear you. I can tell by the way that she's shaking her head. You're going to have to say that one more time into the microphone. Just say it again.
The road on the right is Village Avenue Extension. The road on the left is Rogers Road, and they come together at the bus stop.
In this frame, do you see a pathway to the Celia at Azul apartment complex?
I do.
Where is the pathway? Is that where the individual is coming out of at this point that we see in the frame?
Yes,
And is there another pathway to that apartment complex?
there is.
Can you show us that one as well? Okay, so that's further back. And if a person were to continue walking down Rogers Road, where would you end up?
At the very end,
Yes.
it makes a turn to the right, and it goes down to Village Avenue.
And is there a bigger road that is near here? Like, where's 10?
Loop 10 is back here.
Okay, thank you. This bus stop, is that a University of Georgia bus stop?
It is.
I am going to pause at 6:53. In this frame at 6:53, do you see apartment 114 in building S?
I do.
Can you please point it out to the court? So it's the lit up door at the bottom floor of building S.
It's the southernmost tip of the building.
I'm going to stop it at 6:54. First of all, in the entire hour that this individual is around this area, does he ever talk to anyone?
No,
Ever engage with any person?
no,
Do you see from 6:52 to 7:54 this individual go to the Building S door?
yes,
In that time frame, how many times does that person go to the door? And we're going to see them each time.
6 times.
And can you see on your video of those 6 times how many times that person actually opens the screen door?
Twice.
And the nature of this footage, how would you describe this footage? Is it great, grainy? I mean, how would you describe this?
At times it is good quality, at other times it is a little grainy.
Why is that? Is that just a function of the camera?
Yeah, it's connected cellularly, so sometimes when there's motion, it you know, the quality gets better, but then when there's no motion, it kind of, the quality disappears a little bit.
And did you make screenshots of this still video at some point in your investigation?
Yes,
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit 85, State's Exhibit 84. Do you recognize those items?
I do.
What are they?
There are pictures of the individual that was seen walking around the building.
And are those some of the screenshots that you made?
Yes,
The state would move to admit States 285 and 284.
Any objection? Yes, sir. They're admitted.
And were you all, or were you, in your investigation, attempting to identify the clothing and items that this person was wearing?
yes,
And in your review of this video, were you able to see, first of all, gloves?
yes,
Can you point to those? What color are they?
black,
Were you able to see a cup?
yes,
Can you point to that? And then were you able to see a bag? And it may not be best in this video at this point, but in one of your still shots, can you see a bag?
yes, I can,
Can you please, I'm going to just show it to the court. Is it where my finger is?
yes.
Okay, that just is the way to do it. Oh, is that a better view of the bag now?
Yes, it is.
All right, at 6:54. At 6:58, what door did that individual just walk by?
114.
What are we seeing at 7:01?
We see him walking up to 114. he's standing in front of the door. Now he's opening this outer screen door of the apartment. Now he walks back behind the building.
And now our next clip is at 7:06, so that's how Cyber just put it together. So we're
Correct.
not watching 5 minutes of dead video.
Correct.
But when you see him go to the back of the building, in the back of the building, are there windows in the back of the building?
There are.
And are there windows to 114 in the back of the building?
Correct, and it's on the ground floor, so it would be at, head level, chest level of an adult.
This 7:09 clip where I'm pausing, where, in what direction is now this individual going?
He's walking south.
Okay, and the IM fields from here, intramural fields, you're familiar with those, correct?
Correct.
Where are they in relation to where he's walking?
They're to the east of that, southeast of that, but you can access it by going south and then turning east.
Would this individual be walking in the direction of the IM fields?
Yes.
So now we're at 7:33. So between 7:09 and 7:33, do you see this individual on these trail cam? This trail cam?
No, I do not.
Okay. In what direction now at 7:34 is that individual walking?
He's walking north back towards Building S.
I'm gonna pause it at 7:39. So at the last clip that we saw at 7:33, Did that individual go back behind Building S again?
He did.
Okay. And I asked you about the windows in Building S, and is that, States 276 has already been admitted, is that what the back windows look like in the back of that building?
It is.
And how they were also on that morning?
Correct.
Just publish again to the court, 276. So he leaves in that direction at 7:33 towards these back windows.
Correct. He's now standing in the cutout window in the stairwell.
What is that cutout window?
There's a stairwell inside there, and there's just the cutout that they have in there.
And that's at 7:40?
Yes.
What floor is he on now? 742.
He was on the second floor.
At 7:43, is that a UGA bus?
It is.
Does it pick up presumably students or the people that were waiting at the bus stop?
Correct.
7:44, what door did he just walk by?
114.
And the direction, and now we're at 7:46, so hold on. So it goes from 7:44 then to 7:46, so 2 minutes are missing because we clipped it together, correct?
Yes, because
But you watched all two minutes in between of 7:44 and 7:46.
I did.
All right. We see him disappear at 7:44. Does he go again around the back of Building S?
Correct, he does.
And how many minutes later does he come back again to the front?
2 minutes.
And that's what we're about to see here at 7:46.
Yes.
Does he touch the door at that time?
It appears he does.
Right. And again, it's now we're at 7:48. Again, we lost about 2 minutes.
Yes.
In between 7:46 and 7:48, where does he disappear to, in what direction?
To the back of the building, and then comes back
So
again.
2 minutes later, he's back at the front door.
Correct.
And that's what we just saw.
Yes.
And now at 7:48, again, where does he go off to?
To the back of the building.
Now we're at 7:49.
He's back at the door at 114.
Does he touch the door at that time?
It appears, it's hard to tell because of the quality of the video, but he doesn't open the door.
7:51 now.
He's just standing in the area.
And when he left the frame at 7:49, which direction did he go?
Back towards the back of the building.
And then at 7:51, we now see him again on the screen.
Correct.
What do we see here at 7:54?
7:54, he had, from that 51, he had gone back behind the building and come back to the front of the building, and he was standing at the door.
And can you see him open the door here
Yes,
at 7:54?
yes.
And what does he do right there at 7:54?
He is ducking down.
What direction is he going now?
Back behind the building.
And we just lost 2 minutes. We're now at 7:56. So you described he ducks down at 7:54.
Correct,
He goes to the back of the building,
correct.
and then you don't see him again until 7:56. Is that right? So there's 2 minutes that we don't see in this clip because we're not going to sit here for all this time, where you don't see him on camera.
That's right.
So you see him again at 7:56, and in which direction is he going now?
He's going south,
Towards,
the IM fields. And here he disappears into the woods. There's no path there, just woods that he goes into.
okay, and I'm going to stop it here. So in this time period from 6:52 to 7:54, we've just watched all of that. Do you see, first of all, is this person alone or with someone?
Alone.
And have you watched in all of your hours of video review in this case, have you seen Diego Ibarra?
No,
Okay. In this time period?
no,
Okay. Have you seen him before?
yes,
As a matter of fact, you swapped him, and we're going to talk about that, right?
correct.
Do you know what Diego Ibarra looks like?
I do,
And have you looked for him in all of these videos that you have reviewed?
yes,
And on the 22nd day of February 2024, you ever see Diego Ibarra on this trail cam?
no.
Now I want to move on to the other clips, and then we're going to go back to your last clip that you made, okay? So what time are we at now?
9:05 a.m.
What part of the trail are we on?
This is Millage Avenue Extension as it's coming towards the bus stop.
What time? And you said 9:05 a.m.?
Yes,
And do you recognize that individual we see in the screen?
I do.
Who is that?
That is Laken Riley.
Do you see if anything she has in her left hand?
She is holding her phone in her left hand.
What direction is she running?
She's running south.
And was that also in the direction of the IM fields?
It is. She now went east towards the IM fields and the railroad tracks.
At 9:06 and 49 seconds?
Yes.
And now we are at a different time period. What time period are we at?
11:36 a.m.
What part of the trail are we on?
This is Miller's Avenue Extension.
And do you recognize those two individuals that we now see in the frame at 11:36 a.m.?
I do.
Have you met them before?
I have.
And what are their names?
Sophia Magana and Lily Steiner.
And the dog is?
Champ.
Okay. Is that Sophia's dog?
It is.
Which direction are they going?
They're going south.
Now what time are we at?
11:55 a.m.
And who do we see in the frame now at 11:56?
Sophia and Lily and dog Champ.
Now that it's the sun has come up, how would you describe the lighting that day?
It was, I think, partly sunny that day. It was a little bit windy.
I have to load the Gentech player for this. This may take one moment. This is why we decided not to play it this way. So you told us you watched while we're waiting for the Gentech player to load. That this trail cam for the entire day. What were you looking for?
Anybody that matched the description or anything that would have been suspicious activity.
It's up. I'm going to now play the part of your 279 that says Ibarra returned. First of all, I'm stopping here. At what time are we at?
9:41 a.m.
Is this still the same trail camera?
It is.
And in this frame, do you see the cut-throughs, for lack of a better term, to the Celia, how do you say it again? Celio at
Azuli.
Say it one more time.
Celio at Azuli.
Okay, was that the name of the apartment complex at the time?
It was.
Okay. Can you spell that for Madam Court Reporter?
Cielozyluk.
Celio at Azuli. Show us where the two cut-throughs are to that apartment.
Could you make it bigger?
I can. One in the bottom screen and one in the middle of the screen.
Correct.
Play at 9:41. We see some red now coming through. Well, I just saw some red. Hold on, stop. I'll stop it. At 9:42 a.m., do you see the red?
Yes.
What's the red?
It's detecting motion, the camera.
And what, do you see an image?
I see a blob, appears to be a black blob.
Okay. And in what direction is that blob heading?
He's going west towards the Celio at Azuli apartments.
And during this time period, when you watched all of this trail cam video, did you see anything else suspicious or that got your attention, or any other people that got your attention?
No.
I want to ask you about a few other things that you did in this case, Detective. First of all, did you review the cell phone of Laken Riley?
I did.
And it was extracted by your department?
It was.
Could you toggle over, Your Honor? Do you recognize states 299 to 318?
Yes, I do.
What are they?
These are the photographs that were taken at the time of autopsy.
Of Laken Riley
Correct.
and her belongings? Or items that came in with her body, sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
The state would, no, do they fairly and accurately depict Laken Riley and her body as you saw it on February 23rd of 2024?
Yes, they do.
State would move to admit states 299 to 318.
No objection.
They're admitted.
And in lieu of publishing them over to Elmo, Your Honor, if you could take those, thank you, for the court. So let's start first with, could you tell the court in what condition did you receive Laken Riley's body?
Laken Riley was received to our office in a body bag with identifying tags on the zippers of the external surface.
And is that what we see in states 299?
Correct.
And in states 299, do you see that unique case number that you just read to us?
Yes.
States 300, could you tell us what we're looking at there?
Following the photographs that are taken of the tags on the bag, we will take as, quote unquote, as is photographs. So as we receive the body, we will take photos how they come in. And that is photos 300 through 302.
So I want to talk to you about the condition of her body. First of all, Were her hands bagged?
Yes.
And do you see those bags in states 300,
Yes, and 301.
301? And what other, could you describe her body in terms of how was she clothed and what, if any, other items you saw around her hair?
She came in wearing pants, undergarments, as well as shoes and socks. She had a necklace on her neck as well. There was a hair tie in her hair, as well as admixed leaves and twigs, vegetative debris.
And are those items depicted in states 300? That is the vegetative debris. Do you see it at the top of states 300?
Yes.
In her hair?
Yes.
All right. And then moving to states 302, does that depict her bottom part of her clothing, her leggings, and her shoes?
Correct.
All right. Could you please describe Laken Riley in terms of age, height, and weight?
May I refer to my report for height and weight, just so that I'm accurate? She was 22-year-old female, 64 inches or 5'4", and 143 pounds.
Did you observe any injuries to Laken Riley?
I did.
Can you globally describe them, and then we'll cover them in more detail? Globally describe the injuries that you saw, just in
Okay.
general terms.
So Laken exhibited blunt force head trauma, as well as signs of asphyxia.
What is asphyxia?
Asphyxia is essentially the inability to deliver oxygen to your tissues and cells.
And what types of actions can cause asphyxia? Where do you see asphyxial deaths?
Asphyxial deaths can be seen in hangings, which are ligature strangulation. They can be seen in manual strangulation, as well as neck compression, either by somebody using their arm or doing an arm bar or chokehold or something like that.
And at times, as a medical examiner, are you able to determine what type of asphyxia caused or contributed to a victim's death?
In cases where we have good autopsy findings that would allow us to categorize them into one of those areas, we can.
And in this particular case with Laken Riley, were you able to determine what type of asphyxia you saw?
I was not able to categorize it.
So how did you categorize it in your report then, or how did you characterize it?
I just refer to it as asphyxia and not otherwise specified.
So it could be manual strangulation, but you just don't have enough findings to say that.
Correct.
Could be compression.
Correct.
So you told us the global injuries. I want to start first with Laken's face and head, and then move down the rest of her body, if you could.
Okay.
So we're looking at states 303. Could you tell the court what we're looking at there?
303 is what we call our quote-unquote ID shot. So we take this for every case where we put the case number under the individual's face and take this photograph.
Do you see any injuries to Laken's face?
Yes.
What are those injuries? Please, can you describe them for us?
She has a combination of abrasions, which are scrapes, as well as contusions, which is just the fancy medical way of saying a bruise, so bleeding under the skin, as well as lacerations. Lacerations, as opposed to an abrasion just being a scrape of the skin, a laceration is a defect of the skin and the tissue immediately underlying it.
States 304, what are we looking at there?
This is another photograph of her face with a little bit of a closer view, as well as more exposure of the injuries to the left side of her head.
And can you see in states 304 her neck?
Yes.
And did you observe any injuries to her neck? And if you did, could you please describe them for us?
Yes. On external exam, she had approximately 1-inch cluster of small abrasions on the left side of her neck.
And what can cause abrasions?
Abrasions are a form of blunt force trauma.
States 305, what does that depict?
In this photograph, we have shaved away some of the hair on the left side of the scalp so that we can better see this cluster of lacerations that are on the left side of the scalp. In addition to these lacerations, there are associated areas of contusions, which is that red bruising that is around the lacerations, as well as some abrasions associated with them as well.
What is a laceration?
A laceration is a form of blunt force trauma in that the skin and the tissue underneath the skin are separated.
Did you notice any injuries? You told us the laceration, I'm going to ask you to describe them first. If you could describe for us the most severe injury that you saw to the left side of her head first, and then I'll ask you to describe the other lacerations.
The largest laceration was over an inch in greatest dimension, and you can see it associated with a defect of the underlying skull.
And when you say a defect in the underlying skull, what do you mean?
A fracture.
So did she have a skull fracture?
Yes.
How did you describe that skull fracture, or how would you describe it?
It is a complex displaced fracture of the left calvarium.
What does that mean?
It is a segment of her skull on the left side is displaced from its usual anatomic location.
And displaced in what way?
Displaced into the calvarium.
Okay, so into her skull.
Correct.
There is a part of her skull missing that's been displaced inside her head. Is that a way of saying it?
It's there, yeah. It's just displaced. Yep, into the skull.
Oh, into her skull. All right. And you told us how long it was. Is that what you described? In 1 inch plus.
The largest dimension, I could refer my report for the exact. I know it was over an inch. It is 1 13/16 of an inch, so just under 2.
And is that the wound that we're talking about, the skull fracture? Is that the one in the center of 305, which would be the largest wound that we see in that photograph?
Correct.
And how deep was that wound?
If you are measuring from the outer table of the skull, it was 1/4 of an inch.
And would you expect that wound to cause Laken Riley to bleed?
Yes.
And that wound itself, this skull fracture, is that, or could that be a fatal wound to Laken Riley?
It could be fatal.
Explain to us why and how.
Well, the wound, as you've mentioned, caused a displacement of the skull into the brain. In addition, underneath the wound, there was some subarachnoid hemorrhage. So essentially, there's a coating around the brain. Right under that coating, there was a little bit of hemorrhage associated with it as well. And like was mentioned, there was bleeding under the scalp associated with this injury and associated with that laceration.
And why could that be fatal to a person?
It essentially is causing trauma to the brain.
Did you observe any other lacerations to the left side of her head?
Yes.
How many did you observe?
There were 8 in total.
And if you could go through with us, do we see them in State's Exhibit 305, the others?
Yes.
Okay. And could you describe them how would you describe the other 8?
They ranged in size from 1/4 of an inch to the largest wound that was over an inch. Some of them were curvilinear or linear, whereas others had a more irregular shape to them.
What type of, you said the lacerations are blunt force trauma?
Correct.
Is a rock a blunt surface?
It can be, yes.
And are the injuries that you see in States 305 consistent with a rock?
They could be consistent with a rock.
On the left side of her head, we're still on States 305. Could you tell us what, if any, injuries did you observe to her ear on the left side?
She also had a contusion or a bruise to the helix of her ear, as well as an associated abrasion in that area.
And the helix of the ear, could you just tell us for the record, what part of the ear is that?
It's, my apologies, it's the upper earlobe. There we
Kind of
go.
where my hand is right now?
Yes.
All right, on the left upper top of the earlobe. All right. And what type of injury did you say that was?
A contusion with an associated abrasion.
And is a contusion also a way of saying a bruise?
Yes.
All right. And it states 306, if you could flip the photo for us. What are we looking at there in states 306?
This is just another view a little bit further away, showing all the injuries to the left side of her head and neck.
So a complete photo of the 8 lacerations that you discussed?
Yes.
States 307. Tell us what we're looking at there.
307 is a closer up view of those injuries to the left scalp.
And 308.
.308 is part of our internal examination. We will reflect the scalp from the head, and this view shows you the hemorrhage on the undersurface of the scalp, as well as a better view of the fracture of the skull.
Of the left side?
Correct.
Did Laken Riley have injuries to the right side of her head?
She did have injuries on the right side as well.
Could you describe those for us, please?
There was some discoloration over the right temporal region, as well as her temporalis muscle, which is the muscle that's kind of on the side of your head under your temple, had a laceration to it. It was hemorrhagic, so it was bleeding, and there was also hemorrhage on the undersurface of the scalp in that region.
What type of injuries were those injuries?
Also blunt force trauma.
What is petechia?
So petechia are very small punctate uniform hemorrhages that can be seen either in the eyes, on the facial skin, in the mouth, in instances of asphyxia.
Did you see petechia at Laken Riley's autopsy?
I did.
Where did you see it? And I have states 309 if that would help you as well, if we want to go to that photo.
There were petechia within both of her eyes, as well as coarser, larger hemorrhages associated with these petechia in her eyes. There were petechia of the skin surrounding her eyes, her periorbital region, as well as a small amount of petechia in the gingival mucosa, which is essentially the gum.
So are those things documented in your photographs that extend all the way to states 315?
Yes.
And is that the petechia you observed on Laken Riley's body?
Yes.
So what causes those types of injuries?
Petechia are a result of increased pressure within the vasculature that causes small vessels to burst and create those tiny pinpoint hemorrhages, and that can be seen in asphyxia.
And do you know how long does it take approximately for someone to be deprived of oxygen before petechia can form?
I could not say with certainty the time.
And the manner in which she obtained the petechia, you've already pretty much told us about. It's asphyxia of some sort, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And it could be manual, it could be compression, like someone sitting on her, is that right?
It's possible either manual strangulation or some sort of compression of the neck or chest.
And it had to be done long enough for her to be deprived of oxygen to her brain. Is that right?
Yes.
And what other injuries did you see to her body?
In addition, there were also abrasions of her torso, her abdomen, as well as abrasions on her left hand and left leg.
Let's talk about her torso. States Exhibit 316. Do you recognize that photo? And do you see those? Do you see her torso?
Yes.
How would you describe the injuries that we see on the left side of her torso?
These injuries are clusters of linear abrasions that are both parallel to each other as well as intersecting with one another.
And there's a lower one, I want to talk to you about the lowest one that we see in 316, right above the measuring tape that has your unique case number on it. Do you see that injury?
Yes.
How would you describe that injury?
That is also a linear abrasion.
And this might sound like a really dumb question, but by linear, do you mean a line?
Yes.
And could these abrasions be consistent with something like a belt buckle or some kind of metal object?
It's possible.
Would these also be considered blunt force injuries?
Yes.
Would you consider these a brush abrasion? And when I say these, I'm talking about these linear injuries on her torso.
I can't entirely exclude them having a brush component, but they don't appear to be the stereotypical brush abrasions that we can see.
Why not?
The stereotypical brush abrasions will have, and usually will have areas of like a coalescence. So you'll have those linear striation abrasions as well as a larger patch area as well. And I don't see the same features in this.
Are these linear injuries consistent with something like a belt or a key or some object like that?
They could be consistent with an object.
States 317, what are we looking at there?
This is a photograph of her left hand depicting a small.
Is that the red mark that we see above the measuring stick or tape that has your unique case number on it?
Yes.
States 318, what are we looking at there?
Also the left hand, this is showing a linear abrasion on the left pinky.
And these abrasions, are they also a form of blunt force trauma?
Yes.
At this time, I'm going to play the call. And Specialist Ramirez, can you listen to the call and then give the court a summary of what the call says?
Yes, I can.
Diga Estados Unidos. Después del tono, por favor, diga Estados Unidos. Gracias. Esta llamada no es privada. Será grabada y podría ser monitoreada. Si cree que debería ser una llamada privada, cuide y siga las instrucciones del centro para registrar este número como un número privado. Es posible que usted no oiga ningún sonido durante la aceptación de sus...
Okay, can you tell us what that was?
At the beginning of every call, there's usually an automated message letting the parties know that their calls are being recorded and that if this call should be private, they should hang up and follow the instructions provided by the jail on how to set up that number.
Llamada. Por favor, no puede.
Whoops. Okay, there we go.
Hola, esta es una llamada con cargos y despidos prepagada de... Un individuo encarcelado en Athens Court County Jail. Esta llamada no es privada. Será grabada y podría ser monitoreada. Si cree que debería ser una llamada privada, cuide y siga las instrucciones del centro para registrar este número como un número privado, para aceptar cargos y dar su consentimiento para grabar esta llamada, oprima 1 para no aceptar. Gracias, pulsa. Secures.
Okay, what is that?
That is an automated voice saying that the person that he's calling is receiving a prepaid call from an inmate, and then usually they can say their name, they don't have to, and then the call will ring so the other person can pick it up.
Puede comenzar la conversación ahora.
Okay.
He asked her if she's able to hear him okay, and she said yes, that it sounds better. He asked her where were they in the conversation, and she says we were talking about him going to look for the job.
So what is the, I'll move on to the next. Okay.
He says that he went inside, he spoke with the girl, she starts yelling, saying that she's fed up.
Okay.
She's saying that she's fed up, that he has her tired, and if he can just tell the truth.
Okay.
She says, are you going to, or are you not going to say the truth? He tells her that he went over there to look for a job.
Okay. Okay.
She continues to ask him what happened with the girl.
Okay.
She tells him, don't wait for me to come and see you because they will not let me see you. Immigration told me that if I step foot over there, I will be in trouble.
Okay.
Can I make an inquiry? Is Ramirez reading off of something?
I am not. I'm only
Okay.
able to see the audio that she's playing.
I apologize.
Okay.
She continues asking that she wants to know what happened with the girl.
Okay. Okay.
She tells him that he has to know something, and he just continues to tell her, like, Layling enough, Layling enough.
Okay.
He just continues to say, okay, okay, okay.
Okay.
She asked him if he had smoked that day, and he said no.
I'm just asking, is there a noise in the background? Is that them talking or?
No, usually it can be background noise from a TV or just other inmates in the background.
Okay.
He asked her if she's writing, and she's like, writing what? And he's like, are you writing? And she said, no, I'm not writing, I'm just fed up.
Okay.
He said, you're fed up, okay, okay.
Oops. Okay, can you?
She said, "Oh my gosh," and then you cut off mid-sentence, so I can't.
Let me go back a little bit.
Yes.
Claro, tengo que nada, por supuesto que puedes recibir este paso y te da el problema.
Okay.
He's telling her, "Yeah, you're fed up," and she's saying, "Yeah, I'm fed up, and it's your fault."
No tienen más nada en el señor tuyo. Ahora es increíble.
Okay.
She said that she thinks it's crazy that they don't have anyone else's DNA, they only have his, and she said she doesn't understand how someone can see someone dying and not call 911.
Okay.
He's saying, "Enough, Layling, that's why I'm telling you," and she's saying, "No, no, no, no."
Okay.
She's saying that you're not going to come here and lie to me. I know you. You know something. And he's like, "Okay, Layling."
Okay.
She asked him where was El Gocho when he was out, and he states that he's either in the house or in the bed. Due to the call being a little bit muffled, it's hard to understand which word he's using.
Okay. And I'll stop it right there. Nothing further of this witness.
No cross-examination. No question, Judge. She be excused.
Yes.
Any objection? Judge, if I can have this a second. I'm sorry.
And Your Honor, that at this time completes the statements for victim impact evidence from Laken's family and friends. The state would also have a few more items to present for victim impact, and then I'll address the indictment with the court. And one of the things I wanted to share with the court is that a lot of times when we hear victim impact evidence, it is very much so the way that we hear it here in court. Hold on, I'm going to pause this for. But what we have in this case is something that I ran across in my review of the evidence in this case, which is really 1 minute of when or where this court will be able to get the true impact of what the murder of Laken Riley did to her family and the impact of his actions on her family. Because what the investigators did in this case is, as you know, they were all wearing body cam videos, and there's hundreds of hours of it in here. And there is one moment where, and I'm just going to play 1 minute of it, just 1 minute of the horror that this family has gone through in the last 9 months and what they're going to continue to go through for the rest of their lives. And it is the moment that they learned that their daughter was dead. And in this video clip that I'm showing, which I've marked as states 333, at the top right corner, it's at 1950, you'll see a black truck.
Our daughter is Laken. Our daughter is what? She's my daughter. Okay, let's step over here.
Come on, let's go. Come over here, all right?
It's not good. I don't want to tell you yes or no because I don't have names. I don't know who anybody is. I do know that this is a pretty serious incident.
That's what they endured. And that's how it was on that day when they came here to look for their daughter. And what it took away, you heard from her friends and family, and some of the things that you even heard in the trial. You got a little peek, just a little peek, about the personality of Laken Riley. For example, in Lily's 911 call, one of the things she says is, Laken never misses class. Never misses class. That's the kind of person she was. And in our review of all the evidence in this case, some of the things we had to look at were the social media presence of everyone, and there was a lot of digital evidence in this case. And the review of the digital evidence, I want to share with you just some of it, which has been marked State's Exhibit 336, is that Laken was a very joyful and quite silly, playful person. And a lot of that is viewed in her social media. And the Ring doorbell. Running. Same race. And these are just little snippets that we saw in the investigation that we thought would be important to share with the court, that shows not only the type of person that she was, that you just heard from her friends and family, but the true impact that her murder had on her parents. But more than that, one of the things that the court is permitted to consider in victim impact testimony is the impact that her death has on this community. And in that regard, the investigative team has spent a great deal of time out there at the crime scene, Lake Herrick, all of those trails, and looking for things, measuring things, just going about the daily jobs of homicide investigators and homicide prosecutors. And one thing that we noticed that's still there is State's 335. It's a mural, a memorial to Laken Riley that is still up there to this day that shows the impact of her death on this community. And that is something that Your Honor is permitted to consider in deciding what would be an appropriate sentence in this case. And everyone is correct, and I'm sure we'll hear it. You know, whatever you do, Judge, you can't bring her back, and it's horrible. But what you can do is give comfort with your sentence. And what you can do and what you are permitted to do, and what I And what I urge this court to do, and what the law permits this court to do, is to exercise your discretion and your judgment in a way that brings comfort to this community, and in a way that a sentence which appropriately reflects the harm that was done in this case. And a sentence of life without the possibility of parole would bring comfort to this community. And no matter what your sentence is today, and it will be litigated from here to 40 years from now, there is at least one person in this courtroom who will inherit it, and that is Lauren Phillips. That is Laken's younger sister. And she should never, first of all, she's growing up without her sister. She's going to have to deal with elderly parents alone. Her children won't have an aunt. She is an only child. And she should not have to worry 30 years from now, 40 years from now, if he comes up for parole, should he might get out. She should never have to worry about that. And your sentence can ensure that she will not have to worry about that. And so in looking at the indictment in this case, count 1, the offense of malice murder, which this defendant has been found guilty of, in this particular case carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.